Hello there. It is Zena Krogerall, your American Dream Makers host. Thanks for joining us today. And I have an amazing guest joining us this morning. But first, before I tell you about our guest, I'd like for you to go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give StreamYard permission so that we can see your comments because we love this to be interactive. So if you're on here, if you can go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give StreamYard permission, that way we can see your comments. And if for some reason you can't, but you still would like to comment, just let us know who you are. Just type in your name because we love to see who it is. And share this out. Absolutely share this out because my next guest is an amazing, amazing guy, and he's got a message that you definitely want to share out because he is full of wisdom. So my next guest is Zevan, and he is a dad, he's a coach, and he is a real estate guru. So he absolutely has so much to offer, and we are excited to have him on here. So without further ado, let's bring on Brock. Hello, Brock. How are you?
Hi, Zena. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. Really excited to have you here this morning.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's always it doesn't seem possible on how our relationship has just really blossomed and bloomed. Just like, I mean, a short period of time. I'm always talking about connecting and getting in the right rooms, and just being on stage with you the other week, a couple weeks ago with Amplify, and then you're going to be on my podcast this Friday with Figured Out Friday, and being on your podcast today. So it's amazing how it all works out. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. It's a real honor to have you, and it was a real honor to share the stage with you as well. Uh, Brock, I just would love for you to tell us about yourself because I do believe that the American dream belongs to all of us. And not only can you achieve it, but you can go beyond. And Brock, you absolutely have an American dream maker's story. You're living the American dream and you're helping others to achieve it. So let us get to know you and tell us about yourself. Where are you from? And how did you end up getting into real estate?
Yes. So first, I have to say hello to my mom because she's now watching on Facebook. So hi, mom. How are you? Hi, dad. And hello, Melissa, and several of you on the Facebook world. But always got to say hi to the parents. So yeah. So my real estate career was a very unique one. I'll kind of give you the Cliff Notes version of it, and then you could stop me at any point that you want to dive in a little bit deeper. But I was a school teacher at first. I went to school up here in SUNY Cortland, up in New York State, up here in the snow belt of the United States, with Buffalo, just in Syracuse. And so was going to be a teacher all my life. And at least that was the mindset that I had, was being a school teacher. And so I came from a background where, blue collar, that, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, and then you retire, you have a family, you retire, and there you go, and that's your life. And so I was well on my way with that. My parents, very blessed, they brought me to a private school, and I was got my 4-year degree. Then I went and got my master's, and I was assistant principal, and I was coaching football, being a PE teacher, and I was teaching. And then one of my buddies said, "Hey, why don't you go into real estate?" I was like, "Well, I wish I could, but I'm not gonna go back to college." I'm like, I'm done with that. I've already did 6 years. I already got plenty of debt with my student loans. I'm not gonna do that. He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, don't you have to go to college for that?" I said, "Yeah, I mean, I thought that's what you had to do." He's like, "No, you can take this real estate test and you become a real estate license." I was like, "Well, I don't have any business background. I don't know any of that stuff." He's like, "It's fine. You're good at talking to people." So I did that. Fast forward 7 tests later, I failed the real estate exam 7 times, had to take the class twice, was going through a lot of personal issues in my personal life with people I was living with, and some challenges I had. And I actually was about to stop real estate, and I was mowing my yard. And back then, if you know this, Cena, back then, it wasn't computerized. Like, you had to take a handwritten test, and they don't tell you right away they mail you your scores. And so after I went through this whole debacle, I was mowing the yard. I saw the mailman come up, and I went to and I was like, this is it. If I do not pass it, because I was like, I'm not taking this class again, because I took it many nights, and this was the second time around. And it's like, if I don't pass, I'm going to be a school teacher the rest of my life. And God had a vision, and he wanted to seesaw me, but he wanted me to have that real intensity, and I passed it by 2 points.
Wow.
And so the rest kind of took place, and my mother actually, it was 07, 08, and if we all remember, the crash took place, and I was about to leave teaching, and I was about to dive right into real estate. My mom was like, why don't you just wait a year? So I listened to my mother for at least 1 year, and actually a couple years. And so I did both. I went to school teaching and real estate, and I had a vision that if I would just double my income each year, I would then leave teaching. And so that was my goal. So I started off 8,000 my first year, 16, 32, 64, and literally doubled my income every year while I was still being a school teacher and being assistant principal. So long story short, which is too late for that, I ended up was making good money. But when you make good money, also problems come with it. And so my drinking increased, my playing increased, and but I got in. I left my teaching world and I jumped right into real estate. I had no clue what I was doing. I literally was failing forward, but in a way that I really just I really was more failing than going forward. I was leaning in any direction possible because I had so many outside distractions in my life. Um, but literally, that's how my real estate started. So for the first couple of years, I was teaching, then got in real estate, and then did my own thing. Worked with a small boutique, and then I wanted to leave the teaching world, and I made the big jump in 2012. So it's been 12 years now that I've been out of school teaching, an assistant principal, coaching football, and now I coach adults and lives and help people in many different aspects of it. But it's as we'll peel the onion back here, it's been a whirlwind, we'll say.
Wow. What an incredible, incredible story and testimony. Melissa, thank you so much for being on here. Hello to you as well. We appreciate you joining in the conversation, and let us know if you have any questions for Brock. Brock, I find it very intriguing that you were in the school system and and with a leap of faith, with somebody suggesting to you to become a real estate agent. And I have to also admit that I failed the real estate exam 3 times myself. It is
Okay.
not an easy exam, and I even graduated college summa cum laude. So that is, honors, right? So I was
Yeah.
obviously very highly intelligent, and obviously you are as well. So failing the real estate exam doesn't really mean. So I just want to say this to those of you who are out there and you've gone the real estate route, or maybe you're on the way, and it is not an easy test by all means, and it does not necessarily reflect that you can't do the job. So I just want to give that encouragement to everyone else. But what I was going to say, I'm going to say hello to a few of our friends here. Hi, Shonda. Thank you
Hey,
so much for being on here. And we've got somebody else that is joining. Mary says hello. So thank you so much, you guys, for being here. So what I wanted to say is what persistence and resilience you demonstrated. So you were teaching your students to basically, I know as a teacher, because I've had some great teachers in my lifetime, and I know as a teacher, you teach your students to not give up, to keep going, to keep trying, and you demonstrated that very thing, that even after failing the test as many times as you did, you kept going and you didn't give up. And look at you now. Look at you go, Brock. Absolutely amazing. But I also would love for you to expound a little bit more. I know you talked about how, with the success came more stress and your drinking increased. Can you unpack that just a little bit more? Because I think many people do struggle with success. We think that having success is going to solve our problems. So if you can unpack that a little bit more, that would be great.
so I started studying and learning um, just about successful people, and Steve Harvey is one of the people that I want my real estate. Yeah, you get your real estate license. We'll help you out. And so like when you successful people have problems too. There's no you're not eliminated from problems. Okay. It doesn't matter who you like. My 5-year-old son Bryce has got problems. I got problems. And there's successful people who, make millions and millions of dollars have problems too. Our problems are just they're compromised in our brain and what we look at it and how we use and how we adapt to these problems and our relentlessness to it. And so drinking became part of my out because I didn't know how to handle my problems. And so my drinking masked it. And I was a functioning alcoholic, which I tell people many times I was the worst alcoholic to be. I was a functioning alcoholic. I was making good money and I was in society. And so I was feeding off of all these just like oxygen for a fire. The more oxygen you have, the fire gets bigger. And I was having this oxygen being fed to me and I was just becoming a bigger problem without really understanding it. And so my drinking started becoming during the day and my relationship in my marriage was starting to fall apart. And I used many times the gap was becoming bigger in every aspect of my life. The gap between my wife and I was becoming bigger. The gap between my work, the gap between really anything that I was doing was becoming wider and wider. And just as much as I do, you get to a certain point where you can say, like, oh, I can jump this, I can jump this, I can make it. But the further back you go, the bigger the river, the bigger the creek. You're like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. We're now too far of a gap that I'm going to have to go find a bridge because I'm going to go have to find a tool. I'm going to have to go find a resource to be able to get me across to where I want to go. And so I was falling down into that. So my marriage started to fall apart and we got separated and then I lived on my own, and that really wasn't a very good recipe because when I was on my own I started to drink more and I started to drink more often and drink heavier, and then I got in a lawsuit debacle and I lost my real estate license. So I was doing property management and I was on a 2-year lawsuit, and I had to drain out my whole retirement. So my 12 years that I was doing teaching, I had to drain my retirement because I couldn't afford all these attorneys, and my house was being foreclosed on. We thought my former wife and we thought like having a child, having a $500,000 home, living the country club lifestyle would be the answer, and it just the problems grew. So the more money you make, the problems still were following me. It was like my luggage. My luggage was getting bigger, and I was really struggling on how I was going to handle it, and I really started to fall down. On the outside, rock looked great. On the inside, I was eating away, and so we got to a point that I basically, yeah, more money, more problems, right, James? And I would just crumble. And I had two defining moments in my life when my drinking was just so bad. I was hiding my drinking while I was driving. I know that sounds really, really safe, right? And so I drove to Virginia and I found one of those hotels at 29.99, like those ones like who would ever stay there? That was me. I stayed there and I was drinking vodka, and vodka was my choice, and I was just a crumbled mess. And I remember going to the place. I said, I need a room. It was one of those space heaters, and I fell and I was holding the bottle of vodka and I was in that space heater and I was laying on the ground and I just remember, yeah, fancy. And I said, what am I doing? Like, what the hell is wrong with you? But I didn't know how to fix it. I knew I had a problem. I didn't know how to fix it. And then I didn't know where to go because you think you're alone when you're in this mess. And so there's just I had end up having more questions. And unfortunately, it still wasn't my bottom. It still took me some time to be able to get to my bottom in my life during that time period. And so it was a couple months after that. It was actually 2016 in September 7th, 2016. I talked to my brother-in-law, and he was in the AA program, and I was like, I think I need some help. And it was still a thought process. And we went through marriage counseling. I mean, guys, I was drinking through marriage counseling. I was drinking through work. I was drinking through everything because I didn't know how to handle my emotions. And the oxygen of the money, the oxygen of the fame was still coming with me. And it was just all pretend. They were just hanging out with me because I would spend my credit card and I would use this. And it was just a whirlwind of problems. And so September 7th, 2016, I finally stopped to engage in the opportunity to stop drinking. I read the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, and I was trying to figure out what my one thing was going to be. And I used every other thing possible. I was like, well, maybe it was this. Maybe it could be this if I change this. And like I said, buy a house and have a child. And now I try to pin it on everything else. And then it was one thing like, well, maybe if I just stop drinking. I was like, I don't know about that though. That seems really hard to do. I don't think I could do this. And so that became my one thing. If I just stopped drinking, what other things would change in my life? And little did I know it became a blessing. And so I say many times that God has a blessing for us, but he has to make us go through lessons first before the blessing. And so September 7th, that's when I really I started to make the dive to stop, and I kind of went in and out for several weeks. And then October 31st, Halloween, I drank again. And then that was one of the deciding factors that made me like, okay, you just can't have one. It's all or none for you. So I really immersed myself at that point, and started the climb. It wasn't the that and here's the thing I tell people, that was not the peak, that was the bottom, and that's when the crawling really had to start to take shape. That's where I had to start facing my fears, facing my demons, and stop running. Because I always tell people, "You're always gonna be running, Zena. You're always going to be you're either running towards something or you're running away from something." And at
Yeah.
that point, I was tired, but I was tired of running away, and I said, "You know what? I gotta face this. I gotta deal with this." And, I started, and it was many, many years. Some of them I still face today, some of the demons I still face today, but I faced my relationships. I had DSS called against me with my kids. I had many haters come after me. I was $153,000 in IRS debt. I almost went to jail. The big joke around, people in my circle will be like, "Which police officer served you today?" I had lawsuits coming after me from property management. I had lawsuits coming after me from security deposits. I had lawsuits from my ex-wife. I had lawsuits against me, um, with many different things, and it was tough. And I didn't have a lot of money because I was running dry. And but my kids, Bryce was only 3 months old when our divorce took place. And my house was foreclosed on, was about to be foreclosed on. I was 3 months behind. And I was just like, I have no idea. I had no money for electricity. I remember going to try to get diapers for Bryce. I had no money. I was like, I had to come up with excuses because Laura, my wife, she's like, I told you to get a 24 pack. And I was hiding everything from her. And I was like, oh, they ran out. They only had like the 6 pack of diapers to be able to like I could only afford the smallest one, and I had to go back to my car to get the council to try to find more change to be able to do it. Um, I was really tested, but it's made me into the person I am today to deal with some of the situations that we deal with, because the problems don't go away, like we said, they're just different ones. But it's helped me, and I'll get into the spiritual side because God wasn't even in my life at this time.
Mm. Wow. Um, yeah, that's quite a picture that you are giving us, that you were so broke that you had a child to have to look after. So it wasn't even just you yourself trying to feed yourself, but trying to get diapers and the bare necessities and count and change. Brock, this obviously was rock bottom for you. Uh, and so as I know you're about to talk about your spiritual walk and how you got out of this, um, that is a place that most people fear the most, right? That is losing it all, as you say. So, Brock, yes, please tell us. How did you end up getting yourself out of this?
So in 2019,
Rock
rock
bottom.
bottom. Yeah, rock bottom. So 2019 was one of my worst years that I had because I was dealing with the divorce. DSS was called on me. Both my cars were repossessed. The IRS came after me. Bryce was 3 months old. My daughter, Brielle, at the time period, we were just like COVID was just kind of starting to be talked about a little bit, and I didn't really know the magnitude of what it was going to be. Um, Keller Williams then let me go. They fired me because I didn't have a real estate license. So the owners were just like, we didn't think you would still be here, and you look like you're not leaving, so we have to fire you. So Keller Williams fired me. I had 18 people on my real estate team. I had 6 employees. I was carrying about $27,000 a month overhead. And I really was getting to a point of like, I don't know if I can keep going on. Like I don't know what I'm going to do. And I had a meeting that really defined me. John Maxwell talks about a saying is you have to read the room before you could lead the room. And I got all my team together and we got into I had to do it off campus. And I told them, I said, listen, Keller Williams let me go. And I got to figure out where I'm going to go. And this is not your problem. This is my problem. But if you can want to stay at Keller Williams, you certainly can. I can't. I have to move on. And, um, sometimes I get emotional about it because it was a private ballot. It was private voting. They all got to pick. And my admin at the time, her name was Heather. We came back to the office and I remember going through it and I said, all right, Heather, let's see what we got here. Because I could make money. So my way to make money is I went to South Carolina and I went to Keller Williams in South Carolina because I was only suspended in North Carolina. But all my haters were like they just didn't understand how I could still continue to survive. And I just found a way to do it in South Carolina. And I went down south, which was completely legal. It wasn't anything illegal, but they just were like, he can't do this. And I was like, I can do this. This is perfectly fine. Like I was just getting referrals through when I became an ISA, which helped me create the book that I write today, Turning Scripts into Conversations, was like I just became really good on the phones and I gave all my business and referrals. And that's how I was drumming it up. And so I went through this process. And so when I came back and I was like, Heather, what is it? How many people are coming with us? Like, what are we going to do? Because I don't know what I'm going to do next. And we counted it up and it was a moment that I will remember like no other. I got to go back into the office of the person who told me that I had to leave. And I got to look at him and I just said, thank you so much for the opportunity. All 18 people came with me.
Mm.
And that is when the leadership of me came into play, where John Maxwell was just like, I remember so much that my leadership was starting to be defined. My leadership was starting to grow because they were choosing they had a choice. But it was the leadership to be like, we're going to get through this somehow, some way. I found an office over here in Lake Norman in Charlotte. And God rest his soul, a buddy of mine. He's like, Brock, I got an office for you down below. Unfortunately, like literally at a very young age, he just died like a couple months ago from a stroke.
Wow.
And he found me a place and it needed a complete gut job, a rehab, and no money. It was in July. I figured out a way. I ran my credit cards up and I had some people help me. We rehabbed it up and I had 7 days to do it. During the time period, some of my haters found out what I was and they called the town and the city on me. The fire marshal came in and said I needed to get permits. So then I had to try to find permits and how I was going to overcome that situation. But here's the thing, we all continued. And that's why my podcast, where you'll be on, Zena, is like, we figured it out. We figured out a way to be able to do this. but I wasn't fulfilled. I was just figuring it out. I wasn't fulfilled in where my vision and where my dream was, because I was just there's a line, it's easier to keep up than to catch up. And I was just trying to catch up day in and day out. I was chasing the next thing and just trying as hard as I could to be able to continue to be able to do everything that I was doing, and still going through the debacle of my divorce and my kids, and it's not to be victim. It was a become a victor, and I didn't really understand it at the time period. My story was just being written on what it is. And that is why my book that I'm working on, My Mess to Success, is that moment of like, okay, this is just one chapter. I'm going to get through this. And so I would work through this and I would continue to fight. And there was a time period, it was in January, and I forget what year it was at the time. It was 2021, and maybe it was 2020. I can't remember. But when I lost my real estate license, I went to I transferred over to EXP, because EXP was the only company that it was national and I could bring 18 people, and financially it made sense to me at the time period for their business model. So I go over to EXP, I come over, I get everything that I get the team going. It was hell on earth trying to onboard 18 people. It was everything we could do to continue to go. And so we get to this point, and now I just lost my train of thought where I was going with that. So, oh, so I still wasn't. I was trying to figure out the whole spiritualness of what was going to take place with me. And so when I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and when I was listening to some podcasts, I just didn't feel like I had everything in place. And so it was a winter break, and I listened to this gentleman. His name's Justin Ford. He's one of my spiritual mentors. And he was talking about drinking out of a toilet bowl in jail. And I was like, damn, I thought I had it rough. Here's this guy drinking out of a toilet bowl in jail. And so I was listening to him, and I was like, I got to meet this guy. I got to see what this guy's all about. And so I was supposed to be in New York the week before. I heard he was going down in Florida. I was supposed to be in New York doing a speaking engagement up in New York about some coaching in my story. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to, because my family's in New York. And so I cut my New York trip in half, and I flew down. I went to New York, and then I flew down to Florida to go see this guy. And this was all the way God aligned it up. This was just the roadmap. And I remember seeing him on break. I never met him. I went on break. He was sitting in the he was standing outside the common area of the hotel. I walked to him and I shook his hand. I said, my name is Brock Zevan. Justin, I wanted to introduce myself to you, and your story resonated with me, and I flew all the way down here to meet you. And he kind of was like, wow, really? And it really blossomed. I still, every day in some capacity, we're on Facebook. We were going through so many different things, and he brought me into the spiritualness. He says, you're missing something. And I'm like, what could it be? Where is it? And it was in front of me the entire time. God was with me the entire time. I just wasn't allowing him in. And now our relationship has so developed where I lead prayer calls across the country. I speak to people to help them understand that faith is something that we can't see. It is the hope of the coming attractions of what is out there and what we can do and how we can believe in it. And I didn't have the faith. I understood it, I just didn't have it. And now when I go through some of my challenges, my trials, I say many times that you can't have a testimonial without a test. It's just part of it. You need to have that in life. You need to be able to. The test is just like, this is just a test. I can't wait to share the testimonial when it comes in time for this. Like somebody's going to trigger something to help you with it. And so that was really, it was almost 3 years ago now. And so now I lead a prayer call. Um, but God really, I'm a true believer that without him, there's no way I would be where I am today, do what I do. Um, I've been broke twice in my life. I tell people many times, broke is a season, poor is a mindset.
Mm.
And I don't have a poor mindset. I've been broke, but it was way God wanted me to do it so I can help people when they go through their financials, when they go through their problems. I can say, listen, I get it. I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to go to the top and then have it all just stripped of you because God said, hey, you're not ready yet. I need to do a couple more things to you before I can get you to this mountaintop for where you are. And I just let him control it now. I don't worry about it. I was like, I'll figure it out somehow, some way. I was driving Uber. This was just like within the year. I was driving Uber just to survive, just to be able to get some money because I knew I had my kids on Wednesday nights and I knew that they were going to want to eat. And so I would have to drive Uber to be able to take care of them because they wanted to go to McDonald's. And I would that's not their problem that we can't go to McDonald's. It's Brock's problem. It's dad's problem because dad made some poor decisions. So to this and now it's resonated in so many different ways. And so I know I went on a huge tangent, but hopefully that resonates with somebody and you can pepper me with questions because I can dive deeper too.
Yeah, it's an incredible testimony. I'm really glad that you dove deep. Shonda says, absolutely, God does test us. There's no way around it. And there are too many scriptures that give reference for this for us to navigate through with the presence of the Lord. And it is absolutely true, Brock, that without God, without our creator, there is nothing. And even in the book of Ecclesiastes, when King Solomon at the end of his life writes that really all of our riches and all the things that we work to acquire is really, it ends up vanishing. It's all in vain. So the only thing we really have left is really God. We come into this world with nothing and we're going to leave this world with nothing. So why do we spend so much time of our lives worrying about the provisions that God said, hey, I will provide for my sparrows. What more can I do for you? So you need to trust. And Brock, I absolutely love the story, and it is so inspiring to hear you be transformed into who you are today, because it gives hope to those who are struggling right now. And so as you're going through this, you lost your real estate license. You gained it back, I assumed, at some point.
Yeah, so one of the things I created my own award in my head. And so the year 2020 when I got my license back, so I lost it for a year. And the award that I came up with is so I'm a big football guy. So the football players, like if you get injured and then you come back the next year, you're called the comeback player award. And so I used that I lost my license and I wanted to be the comeback realtor. And so what I did was is I went into the company and I found out how many agents there were in North Carolina. And so at the time period, there was 856 agents in our company at the time. And so since I had no sales in the last year, I was like, well, I'm number 856. How far up can I climb in 1 year? And that was my motivation. That was my drive that I did. And so that year I went from 856 to number 26 in the company. And that was my press to keep pushing, to keep being like, I can do this. And I'm very competitive. And so I find just different ways to be able to motivate me, stimulate me, to gear me up to continue to go. And so, yeah, it's many times, I ask people how many years you been in real estate? Oh, I've been in 5 years. I say, well, okay, is this your first fifth year? Or have you been really in the business for 5 years? Because so many times we just live our first year over and over and over again because we don't get in the right rooms, we don't get in the right environment. And when you get uncomfortable, we're scared to go into that. Like when I talk to people about coaching, I mean, when I was getting coached with Coach Burt, I mean, you're part of it.
Mhm.
Those checks aren't light. Those credit card bills to get coached by him, when I went into his room, it was $5,000 just to go in there just for a day. And that was a little amount. I spend 5, 10, $15,000, and there's bigger packages out there, because the bigger you want to become, the bigger the expenses, the value, and everything else that they get. And I tell people, I said, you can't, when they say I can't afford it, I said, you can't afford not to. It is uncomfortable being in that position many times. I mean, I always remember when I was paying with my credit card, and it was $10,000, and I didn't have $10,000 on a credit card, because the guy asked me, he goes, "Here, just put it on your credit card." I said, "Okay, hold on a second." And while I was holding on a second, he didn't realize what I was doing. He went to the girl next to me at the door, and she goes, "Here you go." And she took her credit card, and he goes, swipes the credit card, does it, and she went on his way. And I'm still trying to figure out what credit cards to use, because I had to use 3 credit cards, because I didn't have credit limits up to 10 grand because of my foreclosures and my cars repossessed. So my credit score was bad. And so I'm maxing out credit cards, and I'm like, okay, I think I have 2,000 here. I think I have a 3,000 here. I think I had to puzzle piece it together to figure. And guess what? I do it all the time. I'm alive. This is real Brock. I'm not a machine. There's no AI here. I'm okay. And I went through that process. But you have to be able to you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm. Yes, absolutely. You have to be able to be uncomfortable to grow. In order
Mhm.
to grow, you have to be there. Otherwise, you're going to stay stagnant or regress, and that is not a good place to be. Somebody is asking, "What is EXP?" Brock, you want to let them know what EXP is?
So EXP was the real estate company that I was with. So I started my own boutique, and then I went to with Compass Real Estate Group, and then I went to Keller Williams, and then I went to EXP, and then I left EXP and I went to Real. And so they're just different business firms that they had, and I like their business models for what they were doing, based off of what financially fit for my needs, and what they were doing. So, but they're real estate companies.
Mm, okay. Awesome. Yeah, EXP is just one of the, and it's actually it's a growing brokerage right now.
Hmm.
It's definitely one of the top ones in the nations. So absolutely, if you're looking at possibly joining a brokerage, because once you get your license, you do need to pick a brokerage to hang that license with, and there are a lot of choices out there. And absolutely, Brock can coach you through all that. So absolutely get a hold of Brock for that. And I want to also go while we're continuing on, I'm going to put your website up, brokerbrockzevan.com. Also, I'm going to put this one up top here, bz3enterprises.com, because this is your coaching business as well. Brock,
It's the I should have told you it's BZ and then spelled out 3.
okay, let me do
My
that.
fault on that.
BZ, I'll spell it out, no problem. And so as you're talking about, bringing out the credit cards and paying for coaching when you're already broke. So here is the difference between being an entrepreneur mindset versus a 9 to 5 jobber, which you were once upon a time.
Yep.
How did you switch from that mindset of being, that scarcity mindset, I only have so much, to I'm already in it. The only way to get out of it is to invest in the future in this manner.
So the it took some time. So one of the things that I would, if I was to give anybody some tactical stuff that they can do right away, is I started reading 10 pages every day. And I started to read 10 pages of books with, Jim Rome, um, Eric Thomas, Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Patrick Lenciani, John Maxwell, all these different authors I would start to read and listen to and study and understand. Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, was one of my favorite books. Um, and I started to really use that as a discipline. At the same token, it became knowledge of what I was learning and how to reprogram my brain, because most of society comes from a scarcity mindset. It's like, woe is me, scarcity, victimhood. And so I had to reprogram myself, and started reading these books has helped me read over 80 books in the last 2 years of understanding it. And one of the great compliments one of my coaching clients had, he's like, man, you're so different now. What are you doing? And I'm like, I read. And my mom, she would laugh at me because I wasn't a big reader. I'm actually trying to find my English teacher from high school to show her and share with her the books that of being an author. I'm like, I never would have thought I would be an author, and neither would my English teacher. I can assure you, because I barely passed English. But to be able to do that, and I just created it into a discipline, and it's transformed my mindset, the way I think. I was talking this morning on my mindset show about the reticular activator. I've learned how to activate my reticular activator every day. It's kind of like when people find new cars, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they have my car. Like, no, that car's always been there. It's just your reticular activator makes you recognize it. And I've learned how to do that throughout my life. I've learned how to go from here to here with my vision, and to understand things. And these are all the puzzle pieces that God puts in front of us. Except we many times when you're driving, you're like, oh, I don't even remember that when we were coming here. And it's because we're just so zoned in, and we get so fogged up that we don't look at all the different things that are out there. And so I've learned how to reprogram that. And it takes training, just like anything else. It takes time. You got to be purposeful on it. You got to have a discipline. You got to do it every day. I get up at 4:45 in the morning, not because I want to. It's just because I know that that's the process that it takes to get to where I want to grow and where I want to go. And so I'm committed to it. I was like, I'm all in. This is what I'm going to do. And so, like, is it going to take a year? No. Is it going to take 5 years? Probably not. I'm still growing. So, like, my game plan is to be like, okay, by the time I'm 50, where am I going to be? What does this look like? It's kind of like the bamboo tree. You got to water it every day, but it's not going to grow right away. It takes several years before that bamboo tree grows. And so I practice it over and over and over again, and I read.
That's great. Yeah, I've been reading a lot the last 2 years myself, more than ever. And same thing. I never thought that I'd be such a reader.
Right.
Um, but knowledge absolutely is an empowering thing to have in your life, and not to just have the knowledge, but obviously, Brock, you've been applying the knowledge. So you didn't just read the books. You obviously took that step, the next step, and actually used the information. So,
Mhm.
Brock, as you are this real estate guru and you're running a team still, you still have 18 people on your team?
No, we shifted that business plan around, and I did a lot of different things in reference to my own business. I'm still in production. I still do real estate. I still have a team, but I don't. I'm a little bit more. I am actually looking for two agents to hire. I got involved with investments, innovations, and wholesaling, and many different things that I do now. And then with coaching and everything else that we do, but I still stay in the business because I want to be involved. When I coach real estate agents, I want them to be like, well, you don't understand. I'm like, well, let me just share with you. And this is not to impress people, but I'll still do 17 to $18 million in business this year on my own, just by in the calling FISBOs, calling expireds, working my database, understanding the scripts, and to be able to. I just had a closing this morning, and so I love being in the business. I love being able, like, well, let me just tell you what's going on in the season. Let me just tell you what's about doing this. So I have a team, and I have a novations team, and I have different coaching teams and virtual assistants now that do things. So I've learned how to, what's the saying? Work smarter, not harder.
That's great. That's great. And real estate investing is a different beast than real estate sales. And in fact, with real estate investing, you don't have to have a license to even go that avenue. Um, and so, balancing the two, having your license and being a real estate investor, do you find that that can be challenging sometimes to navigate the two things?
It is. Um, the investing innovation, those are it's a totally different world when it comes time for it. I just started just like anything. I didn't know what innovations and wholesaling was. And then about 6 months ago, and so I've had to dive into it. I got connected with great people, a guy in Wisconsin, another girl from my mindset show. Like one person led to a next, and so I started studying it, watch YouTube videos on it. And it's just great. I think we'll do 22 transactions this year already, and it's just like understanding how to do it, what it's all about, what you can do, what you can't do, but it's just knowledge, and then just sharing it with people, and it continues to grow for our business. But the real estate side has helped me with the investing side because now I'm like a dual-headed monster on how to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. The more tools and skill sets you have in your tool belt sets you apart, because the realization is that as a real estate agent, we're a dime a dozen. There's a
Mhm.
ton of
Oh
real
yeah.
estate agents out there, and really it's become a commodity because just about everybody knows about 6 to 10 people in their lives that are real estate agents. But what is going to set you apart from everyone else as to why people need to hire you and pay your commission fee? Brock, walk us through, since we're doing the mindset and real estate here, walk us through a little bit about having that, especially coming from, rock bottom, like you said earlier,
Yeah.
and then coming in and being this, not letting it hang you up any longer. Like that obviously is the Brock of the past. This is the Brock of the new. So walk us through how that conversation would be, to somebody that says, Brock, what sets you apart from the other agents?
So one is many times your value and what you bring to the table. I have a saying. My job here is to elevate and separate myself from the rest of the people that you've been talking to. And here's some of the ways that I do it. Here's some of my strategies that I elevate and separate. And you have to have knowledge once again. Like I study, for those of you like you're trying to like, well, what should I do? I study real estate 30 minutes a day. Okay. From 9:30 to 10 o'clock is when I study my real estate. You can go to BAMX, go to YouTube, put in BAMX real estate. I study that every single day. I go to ZillowMarketData.com. I go to RedfinData.com. I study migration charts. I go to Housing Wire. I go to Altos Research. I study it inside out and backwards. I know what the inventory count is. And most people don't. So when I'm having conversations with people, I ask them, "Are you aware of this?" Part of my book, my formula that I tell people, because so many people are on scripts, and God gave us 2 ears and one mouth, but we want to do it the other way around. We never had classes on listening and actually understanding. And so my formula in my book is validate, check for clarity, and ask questions. And we continue this process until you can figure out their problem. Okay. Because we have to keep diving until it surfaces. And when we understand their problem, then we do two things. We're going to check for clarity, we're going to validate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to propose a plan and a solution. And when you're able, as Coach Burt says, if you're able to solve people's problems, money exchanges hands. And I've learned to do that at a very high level. And I've learned to teach people how to do it at a high level, to be able to have conversations. Stop talking about yourself and understand about the person and understand what it is their needs are and understand that. And so when I go into that and I help real estate agents, is I ask them to listen with a different ear. I want you to change your approach. And I teach people in insurance. I teach people lenders. I'm teaching a guy now who sells caskets. And it was the coolest thing. He got an appointment because he had a different approach to it. Because sales to me is just listening. It's relationships. It's understanding what it is that they're saying. Stop telling them what you're good at. Because they might already be good at that. We got to understand what their problem is so you can solve it. And so a lot of times you don't practice. You're not role playing. Athletes do it all the time. Practice. I'm sure, Zena, this is not your first. I know it's not, but this is not your first podcast. And when you
Mhm.
first came into StreamYard, you had to understand you're like, I'm like, hey, it's not BZ3, it's spelled out. You're like, not a problem at all. Imagine if it was the first time you're doing it. Oh, I'm not too sure how to do that. Right.
Mhm.
So the more
Right.
you do it, the confidence increases. But we don't want to do it until it's too late. So we become reactive instead of proactive. And once again, it goes back to it's easier to keep up than it is to catch up. And so many times we're catching up on the new contract, catching up on the new tools, catching up on the social media, and we never seem to get there because we're not being prepared. We're not going into it. We're not learning. And so when you learn and you watch these videos and study it, I always feel like I'm ahead of it. I always feel like I'm like, well, let me just tell you a little bit about the rates. Let me tell you about the 10-year. Let me tell you about the CPI. Let me tell you about these different things that are ingredients to this. And then I make it relatable. And so those are the things that I would teach people and share with you all. Just study it, learn it, and then put it in your own personality, your own conversations.
That's awesome. Somebody's asking, do you have a school? Well, maybe that should be the next project, Brock.
Yeah. So my schooling that you would so I offer many free resources online, but if you go to BZ3 Enterprises, as well as if you go to my mindset page, so that's the Brock Zevan's coaching mindset, Brock Stevens mindset and coaching show. You find me on Facebook. I have a private page there that you can go to, but the BZ3 Enterprises will have everything and you can look me up and message me. So I do offer free coaching, free different resources. I do a program called Power Players Thursdays at 10 a.m. that I do that allows people. And then I do a couple other small little things, 2-minute drills. Those are like $50 a month. So there's just different programs to get people into it. What real estate school do you recommend? I guess it depends on what state you're in,
Yeah.
that you're in for whatever school. So if you have a state, I can help you out with that.
Yeah, that's great. Yes, absolutely get a hold of Brock, you guys. He obviously is a man with a lot of experience and a wealth of information, and obviously very humble and willing to share. Which is, I have to tell you, in the industry of real estate, that is not a usual thing. I know with my real estate career, sometimes it was hard to find people who were willing to share their secrets of how they became successful because they feel like you're a competitor. So why were they going to give away
Oh,
this,
so
right?
true. It drives me insane. Like people are like, Brock, why keep sharing? Because I'm like, here's the honest truth. And the person who said North Carolina, check out Superior School of Real Estate, or you can check out Canopy School of Real Estate in North Carolina. But here's the thing, all less than 7% of people will take action on the activities that we just even doing some of the things today. They won't do it or they'll do it for 2 weeks and then they'll stop. People just don't have the discipline to be able to do it, to take the action steps. That's why I'm like, here you go. I'll give you everything I want. If you actually apply it, you will be. That's all I do. There's nothing magical that I do. I just take what other successful people do. Okay. My goal is 7 figures. And so I just study 7-figure earners and what they do. And we're getting closer and closer every year to the 7-figure income. And that's all I do. I just figure out what they do and I just do it.
That's awesome. Wow. Brock, this time has gone by so fast, as it usually does when you're in a great conversation. Is so glad that you joined us today. Before we say goodbye, though, is there anything else you would like to leave us with?
Well, one is I definitely like to invite everybody to our podcast that we're going to be doing together, Zena, on you figuring it out. Excuse me, our Figured Out Friday podcast will be this Friday at 8:15. I love to invite everybody to hear Zena and her story and some of her defining moments that she has. Um, but the last thing that I would leave you with is, really try to find your one thing and dive deeper to understand it, because on the surface there's so many different things we think it is, but when you really get to the root of it, there is one thing typically always that makes us do what we do, whatever it might be. And I was fortunate to find my one thing before it was too late, whether it was either I would death to me, lose my kids. It could have been very, very costly to me in not even money. And I found my one thing. And now I try to find more and more one things to help elevate me, to separate me, and to make me the person I am. And I attach it, as Chad Free would say, I attach it to a purpose, I attach it to my why. And my kids, and many times people say it's their children, but really my kids got me out of my hell. Like my daughter Brielle, my son Bryce, they are the ones that really helped me. And now that God is my steering wheel and he's got control, I don't worry about anything. And I let him take me on the ride. And I'm here for you. I'm all in. So those are my key ingredients that have helped me that I would leave you with for those that might be trying to figure out what it is that they're trying to get at.
Thank you so much, Brock. Amazing, amazing, and wish you all the best. Obviously, your future is very bright and continues to be. Continue to be that light in this dark world, because it is. Sometimes it just seems so dark that sometimes you feel like But Brock, keep telling your story. It is amazing and it's so inspirational. Thank you for being an American dream maker and helping others to achieve the American dream and go beyond it. Brock, thank you again. And we will say goodbye for now, and take care.
Thanks, Zena. Appreciate it all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys so much for being on here. If you have not liked or subscribed on my YouTube channel, Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, please do so. Would love to connect with you as well. And please share this out. If you found value in this at all, even if you're watching the replay, please share it out and then let us know that you watched the replay. That would be fantastic. And get connected with Brock, because you can see he is a great guy and he is willing to help you get through whatever it is that is happening in your life. So thank you once again. And so I will say goodbye for now, and we will see you next time on American Dream Makers.